Welcome to Redacted. I'm your host, David Shaner, and I'm here with my co-host, Taylor Kottner, and this is episode 1. So real quick, let me do some housekeeping up front. A couple of months ago now, I was on Scott Wingo's show, the NC Tweener Talks show, and I was doing a show about AI, and at the end of the show, Scott suggested that me and Taylor co-host a podcast specifically about AI as part of the Tweener media empire. I think we're officially calling this a North Carolina Tweener Talks show. And so here we are 2 months later. We're really excited to do this. And the name of the show is Redacted. And the name, I think, comes from Taylor and I's point of view on the AI content space broadly. So if you're watching the show, I'm assuming you spend time on social media consuming AI content. And one of the things about that you notice is that most AI content that you see on LinkedIn or X or something it's really polished. There's carefully curated thumbnails. There's good hooks. Like, it's designed to get you to stop your thumb. But anybody who's ever used AI in the wild knows that it's not quite that clean. It's generally pretty messy. And so what we aim to do here on Redacted is do more showing than telling, screen share, get into the weeds, and really show the audience what it's like to build with these tools on a daily basis, and what goes well and what doesn't go well, and overshare to the point that Becca, who does our post-production, has a little bit of things that she has to clean up. So this is going to be a twice monthly show. We're going to aim to keep it 30 to 45 minutes. And let me also kind of talk briefly about who me and Taylor are. So we do several different things together, but one of them that we'll talk about the most on the show is a consumer subscription business called Offline. And when we catch up, a couple times a week to talk about Offline, usually the way our catch-ups go is we've both been running so hard on the business that we have no idea what the other person has been working on. And so they turn into these like natural show and tell back and forths that are really fun. And that's the format we're going to use for the show. I'm going to dig into what Taylor's been working on. He's going to do the same. And then as this evolves, we will bring on guests, builders, other people that are experienced in the AI space, and we'll dig into what they're building. So I think that's all the housekeeping we need to do. I don't want to bore people. So Taylor, anything you want to add, or should we just get into it?
No, let's just start, because I want to start with Offline.
Okay. So what have you been building?
Again, I think there's a part of this I'm going to try to talk about this, but video is ideally one of the best ways to look at this on YouTube. But I'll do my best to describe. So the thing that I worked on 2 weeks ago was actually, maybe you can set this up for people, because the genesis of this project was you handled our events pipeline for a long time, and we needed to not have you handle it anymore. And that means it needed to be simplified and rebuilt basically from the ground up, from an admin and a partner standpoint.
Yeah, let me tee this up. One of the things that Offline as a business does is we do these members only events at restaurants. So typically 100 to 200 people at a partner restaurant. We are not there. Like, our team is not there. And so it's one of the more complicated logistical things to organize, because you have restaurants hosting and you have members showing up, and we as a third party orchestrator have to make sure that experience goes well, and we grade ourselves on the reviews afterwards. And so if we screw it up, we find out. 2 years ago, we had a team of 4, I believe, full-time, and then several part-time people who were helping us with this process. Over the last 2 years, we've used AI to build software that has slowly kind of pulled all of the the human orchestration out of it and turned it into more of a self-service product that restaurants can set up. And I was kind of the last little Indiana Jones sandbag that was left in the process. And Steve, who runs sales for us, wanted to take this completely over. And so I guess as we're thinking about the different ways that people build with AI, this falls into the bucket of having a meeting, transcribing that meeting, turning it into product requirements, and then using Claude Code to build the entire thing and get it production ready. And we're talking about a turnaround of about 10 days.
So the thing on the left, I tried to preserve some screenshots right before I did this just to understand, but I'm not going to go through all of these. I do want to go through the idea of just the simplification all around, that we went from like an 8-step form for our partner restaurants, and a lot of times Steve would fill them out, to a 5 or 6-step form. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but inside of these, like you would have to tell us your goals and a lot about the date and time and the space and capacity, food, like tons about food and drink. A lot of this became unnecessary because LLMs can find a ton of this information, and we work with a lot of these restaurants, so we already know it.
If you have an intake form and you're trying to get structured data, in the past, those intake forms have gotten, every time you need to get another piece of information, you add another field, and you have branching of fields, and you have drop downs inside of drop downs inside of drop downs. I think one of the things we realized in that kickoff call was we can let the user be a little more free, and then have the LLM interpret what the user's saying in a less structured way. So not only was it like we were collecting too much information, it was also that we were over structuring it a little bit. And I think that's a new paradigm kind of for intake in general, is that you can get away with less structure, and it's actually a benefit to the user, I think, in a lot of ways.
I think where this shows up like the biggest on the right side is the one we've done is date and time used to be like a bunch of fields where you were telling us if you're open, your date preference, like they were all structured fields. And now it's one field that says, just type the dates you're considering. And you could literally type anything. And I know that when I built this, it's just going to go through an LLM to generate something useful for our salesperson. Right. And then you move to space and capacity. And this one ended up being a more simplified, but potentially more useful thing for people to tell us about the space that our members will go to. Format went from something that was 6 or 8 different options where they were kind of confused, options that we didn't do anymore, they were just old that never got updated, to just 2. And just an open text field about what else we should know that might be cool. And then we finally added this just generic questions one where this is the idea that, hey, anytime if we just want to add a question to the form, we could just do this now here. And it's just going to add an open text field. Cool. So this was redone. Again, Claude, this was redone from a meeting between me and David and Steve, to some product specs, to me and Claude Code just working for, I would say this one took an hour, maybe hour or 2.
Some clarification and context. You're not an engineer, and everything that we're looking at on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, is that is all Claude Code generated. And this is in production right now.
Yes, everything you see that I show you, that's real. I used to be an engineer a long time ago, kind of.
Like 15 years.
Right? Like I was a programmer, but I was not for 10 years, yeah.
Sorry, one more thing. We had this meeting. Talk to me about how, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, myself included. We have this meeting, and then you sit down and you're like, okay, I'm going to build the stuff from the meeting. What are the steps that you took between the meeting and let's say the code being complete?
This has changed for me like massively in the past 6 months. What it like, again, really quickly, it used to be sitting down, writing a long spec doc, breaking that spec doc up into ClickUp to-dos or whatever, like, and any to-do system, dragging one at a time through a Kanban board until it was done. It's not like, for me, like, again, single engineer, we have one other engineer offline. I know this is not most people's situations, and you're working in small teams or large teams. This is what my process is now. I just took notes during the meeting, and if I needed like a little more clarity, I could go back to that transcript you were talking about. And I just group them into in just a regular doc, right? A Word doc, ClickUp doc, Google Doc, doesn't matter. It literally just said event form changes, and I almost just put, I think I just put all of those, like the ones it could just do if I was sure, into one prompt. And I was like, just do all these real quick. That's what it was. And then the one that it couldn't do was space and capacity, took some porting from an existing tool that we had, and questions, which is not even actually on here. Because I think that's in just like a different section, but event form questions that needed to be redone too. But honestly, it was just, the app was up. I had these requirements. I would just cross them out as I finished them. And then when I was done with a big section, I would commit it in GitHub.
And how do you avoid the vibe coding trap that it sounds like, or that I know you and I have fallen into in the past? How do you know that you paste all these very simple requirements in there and Claude says, yep, it's all done, and then you're not going to ship it and me and Steve are going to say it's all broken?
This process has not changed very much. It's just gotten better because the models have gotten better. Is I paste all this stuff in, I tell it which screens I want it to focus on. It's in plan mode. We go back and forth a little bit of time. It tries to eagerly start, and I'm like, no, not yet. And then it starts it. I test the code. It works. And then I ask it to just like refactor and clarify. Like, there's a simplify command now that works really well. That's a Claude Code native thing that they've added recently. Yeah. Like, I used to have one called Code Review that did a similar thing. They both work very similarly, but my old Code Review one just had rules around like, don't make files bigger than this. Make sure you're using best practices. Don't recreate components. I think at this point, the project is like a snowball where it like has good code in it that I know works because we've been using it for 9 months. And if it just copies the patterns of that code, I feel pretty confident that it's going to do it correctly.
Because the model is almost mimetic. Like it ingests what you have already, and then it's going to mimic what you have.
Especially for a form like this, where we built this form 9 months ago, it's never broken. It's just going to use I know that it's just going to use the form to rebuild itself or change it.
I think the reason I'm asking all these questions is because if anybody's listening to this and not watching, Taylor has a bullet list that says things like format, remove budget, format, remove casual plus good for groups, remove screen, remove how many attendees. I mean, it's the definition of like no direction.
This is an important piece that I forgot. I'm sorry. These I didn't actually copy and paste these. These are for me. Like the bullets that are here or notes are for me. What I actually did, which is what I do almost all the time now, is I will walk through this form with the bullets next to it, and I'll record myself saying, all right, here's what we're going to do, Claude. Yeah, I'm sorry. So that's a huge part where like on the contact page, I need you to merge the marketing page into this, and I need you to remove that option and this option. So these bullets turn into like, I would say a couple thousand words of prose for which is all of the context that it needs to know where to look now. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. It's so natural for me now to just only talk to it by recording my voice through like Whisperflow or whatever app you use, and then just pasting it in there. And this has made it extremely good because I can talk for 5 minutes, which is what I would do with the developer if I was sitting down and being like, we need to redo the entire form. I'm going to spit everything out at you that I know from the bullets that I took in this meeting, and you can just go do it. Right. Because I don't think it would have gotten it from the meeting notes because there was a bunch of little decisions we would have had to make, like that we didn't make in that meeting that I made. And now I'm the translation layer that is, I took the meeting notes, I made it something I like. I need to now translate it one more time for Claude to do. And that's how this got done so quickly.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
So meeting notes, Whisperflow, plan file, back and forth, commit, deploy, and we're good. Because this is, like you said, this is just a form at the end of the day. There was also some architectural things. We moved some stuff around that was admin only, and we moved it over to the consumer side. This may or may not be relevant, but something that dictates the success of events is the restaurant's layout and capacity. Something that we've worked really hard on at Offline for many years is how do you know how many people can fit in an event? So we moved this whole capacity and flow builder from the admin side to the intake form side. And that was one of the things that in the back of my mind during the meeting, I thought, that could be a little squirrely. Maybe that's something that could error out. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, this page that we're looking at now is the capacity and flow planner. Since it was an admin component, it was extremely well tested because if it didn't work, you were like, yo, I can't use this. And now it's like it's useless. So we spent actually a lot of time getting this right. I think this originally started as something that you built in like as like a one-off. I then integrated into the admin flow, and then we decided to move it out. This is the same component. It's just a component now that can be shown here, and some stuff is hidden that they don't need. Like they don't need to, like a small example is we have the ability to change how the arrival percentage is. Like it's typically 80%, like people that sign up will come. They don't need to see that here. That just complicates things, right? And so there is one or two small things there, but almost all of this is the exact same component. And that's why I trust it, that it moved it over here. I was very clear when I was like, do not copy this component. You need to just use this one and abstract it in a way that now both the form can use it and this can use it.
Because it still is internal as well. You just added a front door. So one thing you mentioned there that I think goes back in time a little bit, but one of the ways that you and I have worked together to build software is that something kind of emergent like this capacity and flow planning tool. If you go back 2 years, we would have killed for something like this, but we were doing this kind of by hand in a Google Doc or not doing it at all. And it was because sitting down with an engineer and having them build it was not reasonable. When I was running events last year, towards the end of the year, what I was doing is sitting on the sales calls with the restaurants. And I can't remember if I was using Claude Code or V0 at the time, but I would have V0 up while I'm talking to the restaurant. And I would essentially be building the interface as I was having those conversations. And so by the time I gave it to Taylor to say, hey, this is now a component that we want in this form or that we want in the admin, we had the scaffolding of it in V0. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you were able to do is take that code and point Claude at it and say, I want to add this component, please add this component. And more or less, it got it right, right?
Yeah, there's a data layer when it's in V0 or something like that. It's like, you know, when you work on these one-off tools, they get a little messy. And so, but typically the output of the tool is working. And so you have it's your QA. So you can be like, I want you to rebuild this thing the right way, knowing like everything that you know about the current app we're moving this to. And then when it's in there, you can very easily QA because the one that you worked on for so long, we know it works because you've been using it. So there's this like built-in automated like automatic like back of the book answer thing that you can just that's the QA we do. And this app also just, has like a ton of unit tests. So every time Claude is doing anything, before it tells me it's done, it runs the test suite, right? And so I would say at once a month, I also have Codex or some other agent or something look at that test suite and tell me if it's BS or not. Because in the early days, what these models used to do is they just make random tests that were not useful. Like they would mock all of the data. They would like not really test things. And I don't want to talk about testing today because it's like a whole thing. But I feel much more confident that the tests that it makes now are relevant. Again, from the November December timeframe, like I trust all of these systems more to do it. I think the only other thing that I want to show, and we'll just like go over this really fast, is the way the admin used to work with this and a partner was it was like there were like 12 stages, right? Like if you see here on the screen, like there's a submitted stage and there's a review and then there's the concept development that has to go back and forth between a person. You then have make a draft, but it could only be in one stage at a time. And we decided like 2 weeks ago, well, that's silly. Like, I don't know what you're going to do, Taylor, but like, let's not do that anymore. Right. So there's a lot of like freedom for me to go in and be like, well, we have all these other ways we're doing things in this app now. This was built 9 months ago. We've become smarter about how we work with our partners. And so we ended up just building there's 2 points that I just like short points that if you go to like we have a dashboard, there's a new submission that came in, right? Jimmy's Tacos in St. Petersburg. We probably want to redact Lauren's phone number and email, so I won't talk to Becca. But now instead of it being in an individual stage, you can just change the stage to whatever you want. But more importantly, you can get to anything you want. So can the restaurant partner. So you can be on like the restaurant partner sees the same thing that we do here. Submission, questions, draft, live, right? They can make changes. We didn't have these 2 weeks ago, but we had the ideas in the app. Like we've done this with another product, our offers product. It's just easier to use now. And what that does is now we have, I don't know how much I want to get into this because we're like 20 something minutes in. The other thing that we added to this was when we generate a draft for like an event, that used to be you going through Claude Code and putting in a specific prompt and copying and pasting all of the data out of the form, which we made easy, right? But it's still copying and pasting stuff. So we ended up just switching to this little simple N8N flow where there's a button on the draft page. This happens automatically. So if we don't like it, we can regenerate it. But the second somebody submits a form, and Steve is like, great, let's start working with it. It makes all the things it needs to. It adds a deal in HubSpot so we can track it historically. It links the contacts correctly together so the partner can see it, and it generates an initial draft if we know that it was a previous partner. And again, there's all these little details that went into like a development loop about like, oh yeah, right, that like we have to go back and add that. And it's hard to explain how to talk to it, but I really just talk to it at this point. Like I don't write anything specific. I don't do very special prompts anymore. Like with engineering, I just talk to it like I would talk to Paige or another engineer, and like it gets it because it's an LLM. Like it's a language model that's really good at coding. You press this draft thing. again, like we don't need to go too deep into it, but there's another system that holds like our all of the real data. It updates that system, and then that system tells this new app, this partners app, that like it's updated, and it, again, all the data syncs back and forth. This is why like my initial hook for this section was like, this was a multiple month project like last year easily, right? And then we would have had to not do other things for those multiple months. This took me 1 week like of time, and there's a lot of foundation that was there that like this doesn't happen without all of the other foundation.
But since this is an AI podcast, it's worth saying that that whole foundation was also AI. It's not as if you're saying there was a foundation here that was bespoke senior level engineering and then now I'm vibe coding on top of it. It's quote unquote vibe coding on top of vibe coding.
Yes, the realist version of it, because the vibe coded code that was made when we first made this app, which was what, April or May of last year, was truly vibe coded bad code, right? And it just, it, as you go out, as the models get better, like everything gets better. It finds duplicates, and it's like, I'm going to clean up these duplicates for you, and we have a new style system, and it's like, great, I'll use the style system now to make everything look the same, and I don't need to make up components, and I don't need to use purple anymore, right? It's that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this interface styling is quote unquote vibe code. We didn't use Figma for any of this. I think it's also interesting, there's different ways that you can use AI. One of them is the raw code generation, which is what this entire interface is. The other is that N8N flow, where basically what ends up happening is when a restaurant submits an event that they want to do, we are able to generate the copy and the draft of the event essentially instantaneously from the submission. And then we already have a draft for the restaurant to review. And that's kind of injecting an LLM copywriter into workflow automation, which is sort of a different way of using AI. But there's just there's so many things about this system that not only took longer before, but just were not possible before. I mean, you had to have a person writing all these drafts, and that throttled the number of events that we could do. And
or something like this one. This is the other feature that I really like a lot. There's an AI review prompt. Again, it's an N8N prompt because that's like an easy way. I could have easily done with just a direct call to the SDK, but it's like 50-50, and we had N8N already. So I was just like, hey, go copy this one and change it. This just reads like you send the whole event to an AI with the eye of like, you're a person that's going to this event. What confuses you about all the information in this? And it takes like 9 or 10 seconds, which would take somebody 15 minutes or 20 minutes before. All right, to just come back and say, oh, hey, like here's a bunch of stuff, right? A lot of it's related to the actual correctness of the setup, but I mean, I've definitely seen it say like, hey, the time you have in the details is wrong, right? Right. And those are mostly from like things that we edited as people.
there's a lot of core concepts there that apply to anybody that's doing client work or B2B, right? You have intake, you have admin, development. This whole app that you're working on right now is separate from our kind of core code base that runs our consumer application. It's like a little tributary that we cut out to be able to move quickly and work with AI, and then it passes data back to the main code base. But it's allowed us to really speed up everything that we do B2B. And then this idea of a pre-flight checklist is also, I mean, almost everybody has some sort of client QA before they make a partner portal live or a dashboard live or launch somebody's deployment. And that's another thing that, again, we just turned it into a prompt.
I think the way I got to this pre-flight prompt was very much me looking at an event and, again, recording my like words to say, I'm just literally going to go through this whole event and tell it my process, right? And that's just an SOP, right? It's just like turn this SOP into a thing that just automatically happens now at this point, because like I'm going to forget, or I'm going to be too busy, or I'm not going to look at the SOP because I'm just like a person, right? Which is the problem we've always had with SOPs at offline is we have really good ones written down, but if you don't look at them, they're not useful anymore.
Right. Right.
So the more you can automate them, like the better.
All right.
I have like a quick 1 minute fun one. I made a March Madness 2026 bracket simulator that took, before the brackets happened, all of the like people, and then I had it like pick an act, like again, I just had it pull down a bunch of sources of data that it knew, like statistics or whatever. 100% vibe coded, did not look at the code, did not look at the stats. I was just like, here's what I think would be a good way to do this, right? And we know that March Madness brackets are completely just luck, right? Right? Luck to a point. You can't just pick a bunch of like 16 seeds because you're not going to win, but you also just can't pick a bunch of 1 seeds. So
did you win?
I did win my bracket. I won a bracket of 80 people. Again, completely. I've never gotten within the top 50 before. And I do have mixed feelings about this because I'm like, these people that I'm like in this bracket with, like they're a bunch of Jenny's friends, and Jenny, they watch basketball and they care and it matters like way more. And like, there is a part of me that felt bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a little part.
A little part. The money that I won made it much better. But I mean, it got me way more engaged in the entire enterprise, like of like watching these games. And like, again, luck, you get lucky when you pick somebody like this because like it's March Madness is March Madness, right? Like we don't need to explain that. So I thought you'd get a kick out of the fact that me, Taylor, won this bracket because I ran a weird 5,000 Monte Carlo simulation thing that never gave me anybody except Michigan.
You also beat Claude, if I'm not mistaken, because Claude picked Illinois. So, the human and the AI combined. I think in betting they call your Jenny's friends squares, and you are a sharp, my friend. Take their money. Next year they can pay you a subscription fee to do their bracket.
And then they'll all just pick the same ones.
Okay, I'm going to talk about shareholder updates. The unsexy part of being a founder. So I send out, I used to do them monthly. Now I do them quarterly. Pretty detailed shareholder updates for offline. And just like you were talking about with events, these things always start with an existing process, So I had in ClickUp somewhere a sketch written down, right, of how I do shareholder updates. And my commitment for probably the last 3 or 4 months has been that I want to start everything that I'm working on in a Claude Code instance. And if Claude Code can't do it, then I need to figure out what context it's missing and wire it up, right, so that it can. And so I didn't really want to do this shareholder update. And I thought, well, I'll just do it in Claude Code. And I thought it would be a fun opportunity to talk about how I've been building these super skills, because what the shareholder update ultimately ends up being is just a skill file, right? And there's a particular way that I build these skill files now to actually get them to work repeatedly, especially when they're multi-step and they're kind of complicated. So I don't have a great visual for this first part, but what I wanted to just say is that I boot up a terminal here, and I go through this skill that I call process mapping. This is a skill that I built. It's the skill that Paige used. It's essentially a prompt that says, "Hey, Claude, people suck at process, and they need help writing their processes down. And you're going to act as a process mapping companion. You're going to ask questions. You're going to probe edge cases. You're not allowed to stop until you can restate the process in the chat accurately. And the user says, yep, that's the process. And you need to be able to pretend that you're a chief of staff and tell me that you could run it if I got hit by a bus. And if you can't, you need to tell me why. And so the way this skill ends up working is it starts with what's called with bookends, right? So it says what triggers this and what's the end state, right? Which I think is important for any process development. So I kind of go through that back and forth. Then it goes in and it says, okay, for the first thing you have to do for a shareholder update, and this is true for any founder, you just have a lot of data gathering. Like one of the most frustrating and time consuming parts of doing a board deck or a shareholder update or anything like that is the business intelligence layer of like, oh my gosh, I need to go ask all these people what's going on. Give me these numbers, give me the financial numbers, give me the restaurant numbers, give me the user numbers. And as you know, we had this really complex close process where all that used to come together. And so what I did verbally and then Claude put into a table is like, what are all the pieces of data that need to come together to be able to do this? And what's the source, right? And so we kind of went back and forth to get that together. And we said, okay, that's step 2. Then step 3 is drafting the email. Step 4 is building the slides. Step 5 is sending. And step 6 is mail merge. And then essentially at the end of all of this, what ends up happening is it states back to me, see if I have it right here. Let me restate the full flow one more time with all the refinements. This is the gate 4 iteration. So this is Claude saying, you gave me a gate in my file that says I cannot proceed until I have said this to you. And that's been, I think, one of the most powerful unlocks for me in writing these files is, I don't know if it was when Opus came out or if it's just the Claude Code team doing iteration on how it consumes skill files, but it really respects these hard gates now. Like I do not find it skipping these things. If you write in all caps in the skill file, hard gate, : you cannot proceed until you do this thing, then it really is not that different than a form that you were just showing, right? Like it goes step by step and it really respects those gates. And so it tells me for each step of this process, what happens, what are the edge cases. And so it's essentially built a new and more robust version of an SOP. And now it's documented it as a markdown file. And it's given me a chance to take whatever that old SOP was that I had in ClickUp that was probably super out of date that, you know, if someone had said, oh, is this up to date? I'd be like, yeah, kinda, right? And it's restated it to me, and then it saves it as a markdown file. So then from there, what I end up doing is I do this next process, which is that Shaner consulting skill. And I just took a screenshot of this because I thought this was really magical. So what the Shaner consulting skills job is to take a process, write down the steps of the process, and then tell me the context that has to be collected for that stage to be successful. Okay. And so what it's doing here, and I'm trying to like zoom in on this in a way that works. Hang on.
It's pretty good.
It's like, so we have to get all this financial data, right? And so what it's saying is, okay, well, for some of that, I need to go Slack or DM Taylor. That's going to get some of it. I need to allocate 3 days for him to get back to me. There's a scorecard agent that I had already set up a long time ago that has some prompts that generate scorecard metrics. It has a roster for the team to get FTE count. It can go, so then it's saying I can go back for the narrative, right? So I told it, when you're drafting a shareholder update, you are telling a story, and that story should have some continuity with your last couple updates. I said, because you know, a lot of shareholders, that's all they ever check in on is like every 90 days they get some sort of thing, and you're updating their mental model for what's going on with your company. So I want you to go read the last 2 or 3 updates so that when you write the next one, there's continuity and it doesn't just sound like completely different and totally out of the blue and disconnected from what we've been talking about, right? So the step is you have to review the last 2 to 3 shareholder updates, review the last board meeting, because that's going to kind of tell you what's been going on, review our VTO, And so what it's telling me is, yep, I can go find those. I validated that I can go find those previous emails because I have access to your Gmail. I validated that I can find your board meeting notes because when I have a board meeting, I store that meeting in my local repo inside of a folder called board. I have the VTO and I have a style guide for what those updates should look like. Then there's the email draft, there's the slides, and so on and so forth. Right. So another thing I do that used to take a lot of manual time is I have this list. It's like 1,200 people that I send these board updates to. It's got all of our crowdfunding investors. It's got people that I meet that I just want to, it's how I maintain contact with a lot of people that are just curious about the business. Right. And one of the processes that I would go through is I would go and I'd look at my last 90 days of meetings and be like, oh, who should I add to this list that I met in the last 90 days? And so now what it does is it just says, oh, I have your Google Calendar API. I know who's on your team, so I can take out all the internal meetings and I can just query your last 90 day of meetings, use intelligence to kind of approximate which ones might be interesting and which ones are probably internal. And then in the chat, list out the 35 people that I think you may want to add.
Right. And there's a gate there. There's a gate there for you to be like, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, and then that's it. Right.
Yes, exactly. And that was exactly what happened. And it took a 10-minute, 15-minute thing that would have sucked just a little bit of brain power. It's just one more thing that I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that part. Right. And it just made it essentially instantaneous. Right. And so this was the, second stage, right? So stage one was I got to map the process. Stage two was I have to validate in order to build the skill file that all the context is accessible. And this is where I thought it was a great example of the snowball effect of using AI and using Claude Code. Because if I had done this a year ago, all these check marks would have been X's, right? It would have said, oh, I don't have access to your Slack, so I don't know how to reach out to Taylor. And you don't have a repo set up that has your scorecard in it and has your team roster and has your board meeting transcripts. And I don't have access to your Google Calendar. And, the fact that I could put that in there and it's like, yep, I got it. I got all of it. Like I know where to find it. It's all green. I can do this now. That's the compounding that starts to happen. That's like unfreaking real. And you start to really feel like you do have a chief of staff. And of course, you still have to manage it, but it knows where everything is. It's really, 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 really cool. So from here, so map the process, map the context, then it builds the skill file. And I have kind of an opinion for how it does that. And I don't have any good screenshots to show there, so I won't get too deep into that. But the last thing that it does is I then invoke a my version of QA, which is it's called first run. It's just a skill called first run. And what I tell the first run skill to do is read the skill and use your brain to intuit what you think the expected output should be at each stage and how you would verify it. So it's saying, okay, the financial data and metrics, the expected output is a financial package and offline's API metrics. And what I need to make sure we have in order to hand off to step 2 is metrics and financials that will be raw material for a narrative. So step 2 needs the numbers and it needs enough context to propose highlights and lowlights. So I need to verify that these metrics pass the smell test, right? And that the numbers allow for a burn rate and runway calculation that we need to use later on. And so it's building its own kind of process QA plan. And then we go through and we do a first run. And as we go, there's all these hard gates that say, hey, every stage, you build me a table for step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and show me, did it either run fine or we fixed something or it failed? And then we generate a markdown file at the end. And that would be used for improving the skill if I need to in the future.
And this first run is QAing what you've done. And then it's going to, like, the goal of this is to tease out anything where it's going to break.
100%. Yeah. It is the equivalent of a test suite, but for a skill file, right? I can't run unit tests on a skill file really, but what I can do is essentially pretend like I'm a process manager at a plant. And it's like, when this machine finishes, the toothpaste tube should be open. And then when this one finishes, the toothpaste tube should be full. And then this one should cap it. And like, and you're just watching what's happening. And because of the way it's constructed with these hard gates, it doesn't allow itself to get lost. So even if during step one, we go off and we fix some stuff and we kind of go off into a rabbit hole, it's able to come back and say, oh, I am on this track right now, and we need to go all the way from step 1 to step 7. What happened to me in the past is I would finish the skill, I'd go invoke the skill, I'd have an error with the skill, I would go off on some whack-a-mole fixing, expedition, and then I would have to come back and re-invoke the skill again, get through that step, get to the second step where it was failing. And so I was like, this is just dumb. I want one skill that takes me top to bottom through the entire thing and, fixes it as we go so that the next time I use it, I know it works. And so this is kind of like a 3-part process that I've run now to like get a skill, which is usually just a business process, to work, even if it's relatively complex. If I put it through all of these stages, I'm pretty confident on the other end that like I just built a little brick, a little building block for my day that I can rely on now, and it's not going to break out from under me.
Does this work? You're going to use this?
So I got. It DM'd you and said, "Give me the financial metrics."
Yeah, that's right.
So it's in a holding pattern, waiting on the metrics from you, and then we'll move on. But yeah, I'll let you know on the next podcast. This will be
awesome, cool,
a callback to the first episode. Okay, so that wraps episode 1. I think this will be the format until it's not. We definitely want to bring on guests. So if this is a format that you're excited about and you're building something cool, feel free to send me or Taylor an email. We'll put our emails and our information in the show notes. You can find us on LinkedIn or over email. And somehow this will all be linked back to the Tweener, the North Carolina Tweener Talks. And so you can find us there too. Until next time.